Hello, I'm Sarah Moore, a monitoring consultant with the Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia. And this is part 4 of the Part C Note Contact Note presentation on documentation that reflects your visit. In Part 4, we're going to cover documenting coaching and additional documentation reminders. Please refer to the Coaching Quick Reference Guide that's saved with this presentation for a brief description of what the provider and family caregiver do during each step of the coaching process. These steps include joint planning, observation, action, reflection, feedback, and joint planning. Documentation of coaching practices is captured in the required components of the narrative. Progress on the previously developed joint plan is captured in the section on documentation of information from the family caregiver about what has happened since the last session. Observation, action, reflection, and feedback are documented in the narrative through specific examples of how the provider supported the family caregiver and how the family caregiver participated. This includes documentations of strategies modeled in practice, information shared, and discussion with the family caregiver. The final required component of the narrative documents joint planning for implementation of strategies and supports between visits. Be sure to include the specific daily routines and activities during which the strategies and supports will be used. You may recall we said in an earlier part of this presentation that when you tie in your joint plan to specific family routines and activities, the family is much more likely to follow through. In addition to documenting coaching, Part C contact notes should document use of natural learning environments. Service location and time should reflect family needs. If you're addressing concerns related to feeding, the provider should schedule the visit during meal times or snack time. If the family expresses concern with grocery shopping, the provider should meet the family at their preferred grocery store. The activities described in the narrative should reflect the family routines that would occur whether or not the provider was present. And finally, the materials used in the session should be items from the home or the community location in which the service took place. And finally, here are a few additional documentation reminders. If a provider provides more than one early intervention activity during a visit in a home, then the amount of time spent in each activity must be clearly documented on the contact note and reflected in the narrative. And the correct billing codes must be used for each portion of the visit. If you look at the example on your screen, you'll see that the provider was in the home for an hour. 45 minutes were part of a speech visit, and 15 minutes were part of an IFSP review. So it should be documented on the note, 45 minutes speech, 15 minutes IFSP review. And when it's billed, 3 units should be billed to G0153U1, and 1 unit should be billed to T1024. You can document more than one activity in the same contact note, but be sure to divide up the time specifically for each activity and to use the correct billing codes for each activity. In general, you have 5 days to document information. However, the agency you worked for may have provided different guidelines for timely note entry. For example, you may have been told that you need to enter your notes within 3 days regardless of weekends. Check with your supervisor to be sure you are compliant with your agency's guidelines for timely note entry. Follow your agency guidelines unless the timeline is longer than the state requirement of 5 days. So a note must be written by state guidelines within 5 days. A challenge is figuring out how you can make contact note writing a seamless part of your day. Many providers utilize collaborative documentation. They write their contact note with the family during the last few minutes of the visit. As part of this process, they involve the family in reflecting back on the time they spent together. Other providers write their contact notes between visits. Whatever process you choose to use, remember, the longer the time span between your visit and the documentation, the harder it is to write a note that allows a reader to picture your visit. After completing the Part C notes, contact notes series, take a closer look at your own documentation or ask a peer to review some of your notes. Do your notes reflect your visit? Is the picture of what happened clear to the reader? Do your notes build one upon another to create the big picture? Can you identify the steps of the coaching process in your documentation? And what would you change or add in your documentation based upon what's been covered in the Part C Contact Notes series? Thank you for reviewing the Part C Contact Notes series. If you have specific questions regarding Part C documentation, please consult with your local system manager, the Part C Technical Assistance Consultant assigned to your region, or the Part C Monitoring Consultant assigned to your region. Thank you again for your time today, and remember, you are all out there providing quality services to families. Make sure your documentation allows the reader to picture the good work you do every day.